Before starting the Photon's friend list, one thing to keep in mind is that you need third-party services to manage it. The friend list is based off from a user ID, which should be unique because you have to search for that user ID to see who is on your friends list or who's online. And you need some way to store that. And the only way to really do it is with a third-party tool like PlayFab or maybe using like a Facebook or Google ID or something like that, which I won't actually be covering in this video. The only thing I will be covering is how to find people by their user ID and how to set your user ID on a friends list and how to handle friends list responses from the server. So I'm going to start in the test connect script, and we're going to begin by setting the user ID. So I'll do photon network dot auth values dot user ID, and I'm going to set it to something really simple. It's a string value, but it could be pretty much anything. And I'm just going to set it to 1. I'm going to actually pass it as toString 1.toString. So by having the user ID alone, you could find someone without any additional requirements. However, if you want to find user IDs of people that you are joining rooms in, then you have to have an option set in the room options. To demonstrate how to show user IDs inside a room, I'm just going to go over to the create room menu where we join or create our rooms. And I have room options here, so I'm just going to do options dot publish user ID equals true, and the creator of the room has to actually set this. You can get someone's user ID by referencing their player class instance. So for example, whenever someone joins a room or you join a room and you get a list of players, you'll get a collection of player classes with information about each player. So in my example here, let's just assume that player is one of those individuals. If I wanted to grab their user ID, I would just do something like string other player ID equals player dot user ID. And then you could save that locally or using a third-party service and find them as your friend later. And I'm getting an error here because player is unassigned. That's expected. This is just an example and I'm going to delete this code. I am, however, going to keep the publish user ID as true in this case. And I'm going to head over to my test connect script. And I need to actually make a slight modification to this line here. You can't just set the user ID without first assigning the auth values. This is a class instance which you must set locally and then assign over the network. So to do so, I'm just going to hover over auth values and see that it's an authentication values class. So I'm going to do authentication values and I'm going to just name it auth values equals new authentication values. And then you can assign the user ID in the constructor. So I'm just going to pass in 1. And then I will do photon network.auth values equals auth values using the variable we just made. With everything saved, I'm going to go ahead and make a build. I have a launched executable up, and I have a room made with the name user ID of 1. This way, so whenever I go into my editor and I hit play locally, I can see that this particular user is online. And since I set the auth values before compiling, this executable should have the unique ID of 1. Now note that I'm saying unique ID, which means my client or editor version needs to have a different ID. So I'm going to change the 1 to a 0 and then save the script. This is where you would have to have some third-party service to save this information so that each user has their own unique ID that's set. Now in order to find friends, you have to call the photon network.findFriends method. I'm going to do it under the onJoined lobby. Normally this is something that you would call at regular intervals. Photon does not tell you when friends come online or go offline, so you have to poll the service regularly to determine that yourself. So to get my list for the first time, I would do photon network.findFriends, and it expects a string array, so I'm going to do new string, and then I'm going to pass in only one as the auth ID, which is the same as the auth ID on the build here, whereas you would normally pass in whatever user IDs you expect to find as your friends. In order to receive the callback from the server as to whether I have friends online or not, I need to implement pun callbacks. And it looks like it's already set up here. So I have mono behavior pun callbacks already set part of the test connect script. So let me go ahead and implement the callback I'm expecting. I'm going to do public override void on friends list update, and you can see it's automatically selecting the proper method. And now I can process the friends list here. I'm going to cycle through the friend list with a simple for each loop, and it's expecting the type of friend info, as you can see. I'm just going to name it info, and in the collection friend list. And with each info, you can see there's a variety of information. So you can see if they're in a room, if they're online, what name they're using, and it looks like this isn't used anymore. Maybe this used to be for the nickname, but it doesn't seem like it's used at this time. And then you have which room they're in, if they're in a room, and then you have the user ID as well. And this is probably where you would add them to a user interface, displaying your friends and updating any information if it's changed and things of that nature. I won't actually be going into that. I displayed stuff similar to this whenever listing players in a room and room listings. So it's pretty much the same practice as that. That mostly covers everything there is in regards to the friends list. There are a few things I've talked about in past videos where you could pass in expected users when trying to join a room or create a room. That's also where this comes into play. I have over in my browser the API up for joining rooms and creating rooms. You'll notice that in the majority of these, at the end it says string, in a string array actually, expected users. This is just like whenever we use the find friends. If you want to create a room with the expected users, it will reserve a spot for that user or friend that you pass into it. In addition, if you use the join room and pass in expected users, it will find a room, or try to at least, that has enough slots to accommodate all of the users that you're passing in. One thing to remember is that, as I said, the user IDs are unique. So even if you don't assign one, the server will assign one for you. So if you join a room and you fetch someone's user ID, it will actually be there whether you assign it or not. However, if you're not using some service or way to store user IDs to make sure that they're static and unique to that player and that they don't change, then you're going to get probably a random entry every time that player reconnects. I'm going to go back to the code real quick, and I'm just going to do a quick debug print to show that it's working. So I'm going to do debug log friend info received, and I'm going to do plus info dot user ID to show the ID of the friend. I'm going to do is online question mark, and then I'm going to do info dot is online, and then I'll save and then go back to Unity. Now I'm going to click my console window, clear all this out, and hit play, and once it connects, I should see that pop up in the debug log. Okay, so you can see friend info received 1, which is user ID, is online true. And just to show you that it is working, I'm going to stop my editor and close the executable so that that is no longer online. And I'm going to hit play one more time. And I see it says received 1 is online, false. So that shows me that it's working. And I'm only getting this once because, like I said before, you have to call the friends list or find friends method regularly. So, maybe every 5 or 10 seconds, just to occasionally pull the list.